morning, students. Today we're going to focus on Module 2. Module 2 is very different from Module 1. I hope you enjoyed all the theories of Module 1. Module 2, we have three parts. The first one will focus on arms race pertaining to Cold War, which is the conflict between the Soviet Union and the United States, and pivotal conflicts like Cuban Missile Crisis. After that, the second one will focus on US foreign policy. So you will focus on 4 different schools on different ways of conducting US foreign policy. The third one will be focusing on conflict, war itself. And war, we are going to focus on 2 scholars, especially on Clausewitz, a classical scholar of German, a militarist, theorist, and also a warrior. The second scholar will be Walzer, Michael Walzer, his just and unjust war theories. So we're going to focus 3 of them. Let's see one by one by breaking it down. The first one is Cold War. What is Cold War? Cold War is an ideological conflict between the Soviet Union and its allies and the West and its allies led by the United States, right? Here it is communism, here it is capitalism, here it is democracy, and here it is authoritarianism. The conflict went on from right after World War II up till the fall of the Berlin Wall and 1991, when they dragged the flag of the Soviet Union down in Kremlin. Okay, now we will be focusing on proxy wars. Proxy wars, you would read what they are. They are wars which the Soviet Union and the United States didn't fight directly, but through other players in the game. Like for example, so Vietnam War is a proxy war, Korean War. And we will be also focusing on arms race. What's an arms race? Arms race is when the nuclear weapons, you would know that nuclear weapons was created by the United States in the Manhattan Project. Right away, the secrets were taken out of Manhattan Project and by a spy named Klaus Fuchs and given it to the Soviets, and Stalin asked his scientists to create the weapon, and they created that weapon. And so quantitatively and qualitatively, what's the difference? Quantitatively means the number of weapons, and qualitatively means the size of the explosion of the weapons increased throughout the Cold War, and each side competed against other to have more quantitative and qualitative weapons. So we will be reading about arms race. And the third one is about war. Well, war in itself is a very, very important issue in international affairs. Now, they fought proxy wars. Vietnam War is America entered through 5 stages, from Truman all the way to President Nixon. It is a tragedy that the United States lost the conflict. They call it a Greek tragedy in 5 stages. So they lost the conflict and got out. That's a proxy war. In return, the United States bled the Soviet Union in Afghanistan when they entered Soviet Union in 1979. And the conflict went for almost a decade, and then they lost. That is one of the events which pushed the Soviet Union towards the collapse of the Soviet Union itself. Okay, this is arms race, and you will read about those things. And the second one, important one, which I wanted to discuss, which your book doesn't go into detail, is the US foreign policy. The US foreign policy we're going to discuss in 4 different schools of thought, and it's based on 4 American statesmen. Let me start with the first one. The first one is Alexander Hamilton. Alexander Hamilton is an immigrant from St. Croix, Caribbean, who came to the United States and aspired to do great in life. He came from utter poverty. Through his sheer will, determination, he joined George Washington forces and fought for the American Revolution, and he became the first Treasury Secretary of the United States. So what's his foreign policy? His foreign policy idea is to have a strong military to protect American economic interests, economic trade. Why did he come up with that idea? Well, he looked into the British and thought, how could a small island nation control so many people around the world? And what is their power? He found out their power lies in economics. And so he wanted America to be a strong economic power, and have a foreign policy based on trade using military as a protection. We still have these ideas of foreign policy. All these 4 schools I'm going to discuss have in different variation increase in the countries during different time of our American foreign policy. And it also are available at the same time in a particular administration, Trump administration or Bush administration or Obama administration. It will be in various degrees it'll be found. Okay, the second school foreign policy is Wilsonian. It's named after Woodrow Wilson. Woodrow Wilson is a professor. He was a professor at Princeton University, went on to become president of the university, and was tapped to run for governor by the Democrats. And he ran for governor and then went on to run for president of the United States. And he became a president during World War I. Wilson's ideas come from Kant's. The theory reminds you, theory of Kant's, you read in Perpetual Peace, right? The link. And those ideas were imbibed by Wilson, and he wants to create the world, I repeat, quote unquote, make the world safe for democracy. I repeat, make the world safe for democracy. So his ideas are idealistic ideas. Okay, these are a second school of foreign policy thought. The third school foreign policy of thought is Jacksonian. Jacksonian idea is Jackson, Andrew Jackson, who come from the South. He was considered as a rough and tough man. He is a Southerner who believed in slavery. He held slaves. And this idea is, if you turn your back on me, I'm going to come after you. It could be summed up in this quote, don't tread on me. Have you seen that rattlesnake coiled, ready to strike in the flag of South Carolina? That's right. So it is an idea which came from the Revolutionary era itself and followed with Jackson. And this foreign policy idea is, you don't insult me or you don't turn the back on me. We will come after you. The fourth school foreign policy idea is Jeffersonian. It's named after Thomas Jefferson. That's right. The third president of the United States, Thomas Jefferson. Jefferson's ideas were isolationism. Unlike Woodrow Wilson, which is interventionism, Jefferson's ideas are isolation. America wishes well for other countries, but shouldn't be going around the world looking for dragons to slay. It should mind its own business. And that's Jefferson's ideas still remain in American foreign policy. So these are the 4 foreign policy school of thought. Where did the ideas come from? Well, it was written by the Professor Mead in his book Special Providence. We got to give credit where the credit is due, right? I took these ideas from his book and I'm using it in our lecture because it is a wonderful way to see the world different than your realism, liberalism, Marxism way of foreign policy ideas. Okay, after these 4 schools of foreign policy, the module 2 will have a third aspect. The third is, what will be that? Conflict, war itself. War, we're going to be discussing on Clausewitz. As you will have the PowerPoint to look at Clausewitz's ideas, you don't need to read the entire book on war by Clausewitz, who wanted to be immortal. And he, as I said earlier, he was a military man himself who fought in Napoleon Wars and wrote a book for decades, and he died before even it was published. His wife put together this book and published it. It's called On War. Okay, this book is our American history.